A is for Auntie, the oldest they're all. She rocks all us children to sleep in her shawl. D is for Daniel, who tends to the door. He took care of Massa way back for the war. F is for Felix, who won't do no work. He's lazy and shiftless and ready to shirk. Z is for Zonia, chunky and small. But here come the missus, so I guess it's them all.
Listen, Mammy, there ain't no way to wash clothes. What you all need is rhythm.
What do you all mean, rhythm?
I'll show you what I mean.
The mammy, the pickaninny, the coon, the sambo, the uncle. Well into the middle of the 20th century, these were some of the most popular depictions of black Americans.
Rubbly-up-dub. She rubbed and rubbed the knuckles right on down to the nub, yeah.
By 1941, when this cartoon was made, images like these permeated American culture. These were the images that decorated our homes, that served and amused and made us laugh. Taken for granted, they worked their way into the mainstream of American life. Of ethnic caricatures in America, these have been the most enduring. Today, there's little doubt that these images shape the most gut-level feelings about race.
When you see hundreds of them in all parts of the country, persisting over a very long period of time, they have to have meaning. They obviously appeal to people. They appeal to the creator, but they appeal also to the consumers, those who read look at the cartoons or read the novels or buy the artifacts.
It's not just that it's in the figurines and in the, the coffee pots and so on. It is that we are seen that way, perceived that way, even in terms of public policy. And that our lives are lived under that shadow. And sometimes we then even become to believe it ourselves.
Blacks don't really look like that. So why is it so appealing to people to think they look like that and to pretend they look like that and to like to look at icons that look like that? You look at them often enough, and black people begin to look like that, even though they don't. So that they've had a great impact in our society. They therefore tell us both about the inner desires of the people who create and consume them, and also they tell us about some of the forces that shape reality for large portions of our population.
Well now, children, tonight old Uncle Tom is going to tell you the real true story about Uncle Tom's cabin. Now, this is the...
Contained in these cultural images is the history of our national conscience, a conscience striving to reconcile the paradox of racism in a nation founded on human equality, a conscience coping with this profound contradiction through caricature. What were the consequences of these caricatures? How did they mold and mirror the reality of racial tensions in America for more than 100 years?
I got to take down the judge's clothes. Got to take 'em in the house. Yes, Lord. Got to get out that old ironing board. Fix 'em up for the judge to wear.
When this film was released in 1934, The black mammy had become such a staple figure in portraits of the Old South, it was hard to imagine a Southern home without her.
Praise the Lord, Mr. Room. Is you a hat or is you ain't? Hi, Delcy. How come you here?
Like the Happy Sambo, the mammy emerged as a defense of slavery. Plantation novels and minstrel shows presented her as fat, pitch black, and happily obedient to her master and mistress.
You stay here. Us is going to kill the high stepness rooster in the yard and a great big bowl of milk gravy and grits. And waffles? Don't you worry none, honey. You's home now. Miss Rose home. Miss Rose home.
She was always presented as docile, loyal, protective of the White House and the big house, an indication that, that she understood the value of the society. She is presented almost as an antithesis of the white lady, the person who does not have the qualities of fragility and beauty which would make her valued in the society.
A man named T.D. Rice brought a new sensation to American theater. Rice was known as an Ethiopian delineator, a white comedian who performed in blackface. The name of his routine would later become the symbol of segregation in the South.
The Jim Crow was a dance that started on the plantations as a result of dancing being outlawed in 1690. Dancing was said to be crossing your feet by the church. And so the slaves created a way of shuffling and sliding to safely glide around the laws without crossing their feet.
The slaves had a saying for their cunning in skirting the law.
Wheel about and turn about and jump just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow.
According to legend, T.D. Rice saw a crippled black man dancing an exaggerated Jim Crow dance. Rice took the man's tattered clothes and that night imitated him on stage.
It was an instant success, and America loved it. And a bevy of imitators came about. Literally hundreds of men tore up their clothes, discarded their perfect dialects of the black man, and began to do this exaggerated character dance, which became known as the Jim Crow character. And so here we have Jim Crow, T.D. Rice, taking a dance which was altered by a law from a man who was crippled and exaggerating it again, and he had no intention of presenting truth. But what was bought by the majority of people in Ohio and in the Louisiana Territory and along the Erie Canal was that this was a true image, and it was a devastating image. People in small towns who had never seen blacks, and suddenly saw Rice, bought that as a black image.
In 1843, a group of blackface performers joined together to form a single troupe. Instead of delineators, they called themselves minstrels. The minstrel show captivated broad audiences, mostly in the North, and emerged as America's first form of national popular entertainment. Like movies today, successful minstrels played to the tastes and values of their audiences. Jim Crow, reflecting popular demand, evolved into the singing, dancing Sambo. This light-hearted figure became one of the most potent forces in the politics of slavery.
The minstrelry era really took off at the same time that the abolitionist movement took off. As there were people working to end slavery, people working to eradicate slavery, there were also people increasing the exaggerated portrayals that we find in the minstrel materials.
Minstrel caricatures mirrored the prevailing belief that slavery was good for the slave, since it drew upon his natural inferiority and willingness to serve. Slaves were content The proof was offered in the image of the happy Sambo.
The old plantation was presented as a kind of paradise. Well, white Americans were being constantly bombarded with the image of happy slaves, is what it amounted to. So slavery must be a good institution if the slaves were happy and the masters were kindly. And so that whole cultural image of a benign or beneficent institution was projected constantly in the period immediately before the Civil War.
So blessed with moderate work, with ample fare, with all the good the starving pauper needs, the happier slave on each plantation leads.
I am quite sure they never could become a happier people than I find them here. No tribe of people have ever passed from barbarism to civilization whose progress has been more secure from harm, more genial to their character, or better adapted to their intellectual feebleness than the Negroes.
Oh, hand the banjo down to play.
We'll make it ring both night and day.
Hey, we care not what the white folks say. They can't get us to run away.
Time and again, these sentiments were expressed in the popular songs and novels before the Civil War. For many Americans, North and South, the myth of Sambo resolved both the moral and political conflict of allowing slavery in a free society.
On the one hand, whites liked to think of their blacks as Sambos in the antebellum period, but they could never have operated plantations with Sambos, and they knew that.
The slavery debate grew more heated as the Civil War approached. Minstrels playing to conservative sentiment turned their attention to free blacks in the North, and a new character appeared beside the Southern Sambo, Zip Coon.
Transcendentalism is that spiritual cognizance of the psychological irrefragability.
A dandy and a buffoon, Zip Coon's attempts to imitate whites mocked the notion of racial equality. Together, Zip Coon and Sambo provided a double-edged defense of slavery. Zip Coon, proof of blacks' ludicrous failure to adapt to freedom, and Sambo, the fantasy of happy darkies in their proper place.